Coffee is for leaders.
But beyond that too, it's, just in West Virginia, we've been really proud for a really long time of how we've been able to power the Industrial Revolution, how we've been able to power the rest of the country. And, that's kind of drilled into us growing up in the state.
Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. You are the CEO and founder of Holler. Tell us what Holler is and how you became the CEO and founder of the company.
Yeah. So at Holler, we're the largest developer and installer of solar projects in central Appalachia, particularly in my home state of West Virginia. But we also work in Kentucky and Ohio and Virginia. But really for the last 12 years or so, we've been on a mission to build the solar industry from scratch in coal country, and to do it in a way that helps folks who had always gotten left behind. So we in particular started working with churches and libraries and homeless shelters, and developing job training programs for kids of coal miners, and all kinds of fun stuff that is letting us not just build a company, but build an industry and do it in a way that we're proud of, and we'll always be able to look back on pride with.
What about solar gets you excited?
A whole bunch of different things. But when we're working with a school, for instance, we're working with Wayne County School System right now in the heart of coal country in southern West Virginia. With the latest rate hikes in place, we're going to be able to save them enough to pay for 9 teachers forever.
You're kidding.
So every little bit of solar we put into their building means that they can put more towards teachers and books and programming, and that always makes me happy. But beyond that too, it's just in West Virginia, we've been really proud for a really long time of how we've been able to power the Industrial Revolution, how we've been able to power the rest of the country. And, that's kind of drilled into us growing up in the state. And, back in high school and college, we all talked about getting out or moving away. And it was, you could kind of see the writing on the wall that things were changing. And so a huge part of the impetus behind starting up Holler was making it so that kids didn't have to move away if they wanted to continue to work in energy. And so that's been a big piece of what we're doing here.
How does the state treat solar companies compared to obviously coal is West Virginia is known for that.
Mm-hmm.
Known for that industry still, and I know that they're trying to keep it alive as much as possible. How do politicians, government, all that type of stuff, how do they treat solar?
Surprisingly well. So we've gotten a ton of support from our federal legislators over the years. Partly because not that we're getting a ton of grant funding or anything. It's just more that people like the idea of us continuing to be an energy state and being able to keep doing what we've always been doing. Beyond that, though, it's I think the one thing that really unites folks across the state is hatred of the utilities and how prices on utilities go up year after year after year. And in our state, we've got the fastest rising utility rates of any place in the country, and have for the last decade or so. So there's a real interest in people kind of taking control. We've got a monopoly utility that they don't have to compete. They can just keep raising prices however much they can convince the Public Service Commission to let them do. And as a result, people are kind of looking for alternatives, and solar is the easiest and kind of easiest to understand and easiest to put in place.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, all over the place. I'm, I get excited by shiny new things. So there's that. But so I personally am super involved on the policy and finance front. So we're constantly involved in Public Service Commission cases or federal legislation. So kind of working on that. On the finance side, it's been really interesting that for a long time, our biggest challenge had always been that we were growing too fast. We had a 5 straight years where we were growing more than 75% a year, and whenever you do that, you're constantly hitting up against your cash, your lines of credit, and so constantly negotiating with banks and financiers for the financing that'll allow us to do more stuff. And so that's a good time. And then a little bit of everything beyond that too.
Tell us about this virtual power plant idea and this whole crowdfunding model that you kind of innovated for this industry.
So back in 2013, so grew up in West Virginia. Grew up in my small town of 1,500 people. Moved away for college and grad school and getting into the industry. But in 2013, moved back home to start up the company. And I really wanted to work to do my work with churches and nonprofits around the state, figuring that they're the folks who need it most. The way you typically do solar for groups like that is what's called a power purchase agreement, where a solar company owns the panels, sells the power to the church, and then takes the tax credits behind the scenes. And you had to do it that way because nonprofits don't pay any taxes in the first place to be able to get credits. Well, I started working with my congregation, Shepherdstown Presbyterian Church, and we attempted to do the first power purchase agreement in the state. But then we got shut down by the Public Service Commission for violating the utilities monopoly on selling power. The PSC said, no, only the utility can do that. And sorry, too bad. And at this point, I'd already quit my job. I'd already moved home and needed to figure out something to do. So we went back to the drawing board and created the first virtual power plant in the country, which the idea is instead of having a coal plant or a nuclear plant in one single place, what if you hook up hundreds or even thousands or millions of little things and coordinate them all at the same time? And in our case, we did that with water heaters. So I convinced 100 of my neighbors in our tiny little town to let me install a remote control on their water heater. And then my wife started day trading them on and off every 2 seconds with fluctuations of the power grid. And we were using water heaters to stabilize the entire power grid across West Virginia and Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania. So we're playing in this real-time market. And we used all the revenue from that to give away solar to the Presbyterian Church. So that initial project would have cost the congregation 55 grand. Instead, it didn't cost them anything. And it was all paid for just by these little day trading little blips in electricity consumption.
That's wild.
We did that back in 2013, 2014. Now, of course, Tesla is doing it with their battery systems. There's lots of virtual power plants going on, but we did it first in small town West Virginia. Makes me really proud. And then from there, we did it first with my church, and then the Harpers Ferry Library, and then an affordable housing group. And we, for the first couple of years of our business, we never charged for a project. We just kept giving them away. I don't think it was until year 3 or 4 that we actually built a system for like a normal contract.
That's wild. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Tell us what you've learned about leadership throughout, leading this company. And you're a leader in a lot of different spaces. You're the leader of the company, but you're also, there in West Virginia and even beyond, a leader in the solar space and energy and things like that. What have you learned about leadership?
For me, it's really about it's not about a hierarchy. It's more about just sharing what I'm excited about and what ideas are popping into my head. And then I love having whiteboarding sessions with the whole team and the company, and we're going through all these crazy ideas and how are we actually going to pull them off. Of course, you need people who are good at the details and good at organization, and we're fitting those people into the right space. But yeah, it's very much not a dictatorial my way or the highway kind of place. It's we're all here because we love this thing, and let's jam on this and do it because we all love it. So that tends to be the approach within the company. And then as far as being involved in the wider solar space, I think what's been so important for us all along is that we're not just representing a company, we're actually representing our customers. And so we, whenever our customers are taken advantage of by the utilities, we're out there alongside them, and we're thinking about this not just from the perspective of a company trying to make money, but how do you use the company to drive the revitalization of an entire state. West Virginia is the only state that's lost population since the 50s. Like the entire country has tripled or more at this point. And here's West Virginia actually slowly declining in population. So we've got lots of towns that have been emptying out, and we're doing everything we can to try to locate manufacturing back in the state and advocate for that, even if it's not going to be us doing the manufacturing, just because we care about this place and want our towns to survive. And doing work with low income folks, because those are our people and our neighbors and our friends. And so all of our policy work is kind of geared towards that. We even unionized as a solar company, or we unionized our installation crews willingly, and we approached the union to bring them to join up back in 2020. And we did that because West Virginia really kickstarted the labor movement back in the 20s. 19 teens and 20s, and even before that. And our approach has always been that just because you're changing the energy source doesn't mean you need to get rid of all the other great things that had come along with it. So we're really proud of that. We're the there were only a handful of companies at that point that, especially on the smaller end, like with residential and small commercial. Circa 2020, all the unionized shops were huge utility scale kind of industrial shops. So proving that we could do that while working on people's homes was basically unheard of at that point.
Why has West Virginia uniquely experienced that decline since the 50s?
Back then, we had at its peak, we had about 400,000 coal miners out of 1.8 million people.
Oh wow!
So just if you think everybody was involved in the industry, and like you go across the southern part of the state and you've got entire towns that have just shrunk. And as the coal industry became more mechanized, as it the image of a coal miner is someone with a pickaxe, like literally picking at the coal underground. Well, starting in about the 80s, in the 1980s, that started to change, and coal miners for the last 30 to 40 years have been more like they operate big rigs, they're driving big equipment, they're using dozers and dynamite, and it's just a different industry than it was back then. So it's gotten a whole lot more efficient from a personnel perspective. You need a whole lot fewer miners to produce the same amount of coal, and with that, everything kind of shrunk up. And then when you don't need as many miners, that means you don't need as many grocery stores, you don't need as many teachers, you don't when you've got an entire town of like 3,000, 5,000 people, and the main industry is the mine, and the mine doesn't need as many people anymore, the town's just going to shrink up. Add on top of that even back in the 50s, people were telling kids going through West Virginia high schools that if you want to make it in this world, you got to get out. And like if you ever saw the movie October Sky that came out back in the 90s, that was really the feeling. The result of that is you get a brain drain. Everybody who's ambitious, everybody who wants to go get a good job, ends up going away to college or just kind of floating away. And and all of that just kind of feeds on itself. So it in order to reverse that, you've got to make good opportunities available to people. You've got to actually give people a reason to stay home, and really just provide the types of jobs and careers that people are going to want to do every day for their lives. And not that we're everything to that. We can't be, but that's we're trying to provide a little sliver of what we can. And at this point, we've about 95 folks working at Solar Holler. One of the other really cool things that we've been doing to combat the brain drain is launching internship programs with different county school systems. So one is the school system that I was mentioning that we're solarizing. We're covering all their schools with solar, but we've also got an internship program going with their VOTEC programs. So kids are seniors in high school are going to school 4 days a week for electrical theory and history and carpentry and everything else they're going to school for. And then 1 day a week, they're paid members of our crews. We're really specifically targeting seniors in high school because that's a really important fork in your life where you can either go down one path that means moving away, moving out of state, moving to Columbus or Pittsburgh or Raleigh or wherever you're going to go. And if you do that, you're probably never coming back. Odds are you're not coming back. Or if you stick around at that point, you get to stay close to your family, you get to stay close to your social networks, kind of make a go of it. And so we're currently on our third cohort, and during the first two cohorts, we ended up having a 40% sign-on rate full time at graduation. So I'm just thrilled about that in terms of getting, developing the talents that we need to actually pull this off. Where turns out you need a lot of people to run an entire economy off of renewables. But then from the brain drain perspective, I'm really, really excited that we've been able to have so much success.
What do you read? And what reading recommendations would you have for us?
For a long time, I only read nonfiction, but I'm needing more and more fiction these days to so my favorite book of the past year is a book called The North Woods by Daniel Mason. It follows a single farm in Massachusetts through 400 years and all the families that kind of cycle in and out of this apple orchard, and has a little bit of paranormal stuff in there too, and some ghosts. But that's probably the single book that's stuck with me the most over the past year. Which I think makes sense given my attachment to places and countryside, and that book really just made me happy.
That's incredible. Tell us how you're thinking about we're speaking beginning of 2025 here. How are you thinking about this year versus last year at this time, economic outlook and how things are looking? I mean, obviously, there was some unpredictability at the beginning of last year for obvious reasons and some unobvious. How are you feeling right now?
This is an interesting year for renewables in general, given the new administration coming in. So we're just I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now around. I don't know if you want to edit this out, but we're dealing over the last 2 weeks with federal agencies kind of ignoring contracts that had been signed over the last year. So we're just dealing with the bureaucracy of all that, and tariffs being implemented this weekend. And so there's there's all of the government uncertainty, but the other things that are those are the headwinds. The tailwinds that we're dealing with, though, are that there's more power needed than ever before. Artificial intelligence has taken off, and it turns out you need a ton of juice to power those data centers. And in particular, for us in West Virginia, like my hometown is like in the Eastern Panhandle, like right on the Potomac River. So we're 30 miles from the data centers in Northern Virginia that are powering the entire internet. Just gobs and gobs of power that you need to do that. And the only way to get power onto the grid fast enough is to be putting in panels in little bits. It takes a ton of time. It can take 7 years to put in a utility scale or like a giant power plant. It takes us a month or two to put in to put in a rooftop array, like from contract to actually putting it in. So that's all at our back right now. That it turns out people need power, and solar is the cheapest way on the planet to make it, and that's not changing no matter what kind of bureaucratic kerfluffles go on in the meantime.
Yeah, for sure. Give me a sense for how you think about this need for power in the age of AI. I mean, it's obviously what everybody's thinking about. I mean, the president with a bunch of huge tech leaders announced a $500 billion project that was mostly around infrastructure, meaning mostly around power and data centers. How do you think that gets solved? I mean, if we need that much power, and it's interesting because maybe we don't, because post that, DeepSeek comes out and says that they did it for way less. So who knows? But how are you thinking about AI and our need for power and how we don't have nearly enough, according to the experts?
Yeah, it's been fascinating watching the utilities adjust their projections on how much power they're going to need. And the Commonwealth of Virginia, for instance, the forecasts in the last year or two have changed so that they're doubling the amount of power they need as a state, just because of the data centers that are in pipeline or in queue. Once again, it kind of all comes back to speed. And right now, you've got this huge log jam of everybody who is thinking about building a solar farm or a wind farm or re-upping a nuclear plant or anything like that. They're all kind of just throwing their hats in the ring, and it's taking years and years and years to analyze all that. So on the one hand, you actually need some AI to figure out how to do all the power clustering analysis, which I don't know if that helps our problem, or it should drive a bunch of efficiency in how you actually analyze it to bring stuff on board. So there's some really cool companies in the solar software space working on that angle. Shout out to my friends at Kabbalah Analytics working on that. But beyond that, too, you just really need to think about it from the perspective of speed to market. And if it's there was an announcement maybe a month ago, I forget exactly when, that Virginia is trying to put the first nuclear fusion power plant into operation down in Norfolk or down in Hampton Roads somewhere. But even with that announcement, we're still, if everything goes right, 6 or 7 years away. In the meantime, you've got AI, you've got data centers that need the electricity, and that means they're probably going to be burning more coal. They're probably going to be burning more gas, just because that's what's available right now. And if you want to meet it in a non-carbon way, you just have to be putting in more solar as easily as you can, which is going to be on rooftops. It's going to be behind the meter. It's going to be where people are already using power, and just using those rooftops as much as we can. Because like I said, we can, instead of a 7-year wait, we can go from contract to actually building it in the space of a month or two.
Yeah, that's interesting. Finally, we end every interview with the same question, and that is, at CEO.com, we believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
There's a couple of folks. All my professors at Allegheny who took a chance on a crazy kid with crazier hair from little Appalachian town. Beyond that, my friends Dwayne and James, who hired me into my first solar role, despite having no experience in the industry. So thanks, Dwayne and James. And then I'd say an even bigger shout out goes to all my friends at Shepherdstown Presbyterian, who, what was that, 12 years ago now, took a chance that I'd actually be able to pull off this crazy idea of a virtual power plant, and that they were willing to be guinea pigs in their own homes with it. And all the good stuff that has come out of it, and all of Solar Holler and everything that developed after that, was because they didn't laugh me out of the room. So,
Dan, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on. Congratulations on everything you built, seriously, and you're making a difference in the world, which is unique and really fun.
I appreciate the chance to be on here.